Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wild Winter Women YouTube channel. I'm Leah, here with a daily recording to provide commentary on the Iditarod Trail Invitational, which is a human-powered race taking place now in Alaska. Today is currently the afternoon of Wednesday, March 19th. And today I'm joined by Janice Tower, and Janice raced the 1,000-mile Iditarod Trail Invitational race on bike this year and finished just 3 days ago on Sunday afternoon with a time of 21 days, 1 hour and 25 minutes. She was the second woman on bike in the 1,000-mile race, and her first time in the Iditarod Trail Invitational in the 350-mile race was in 2002. So it's been 23 years since she's been at this. Prior to this year, she started the 350-mile race 6 times and finished 4 times. In addition to that, she completed the Susitna 111 times, White Mountains 100 4 or 5 times, and the Arrowhead 135 in Minnesota once. Her motto is to dream big and dare to fail, which is attributed to Norman Vaughn, who was an influential polar explorer, mountaineer, and Iditarod musher, completing the Iditarod Trail sled dog race for the last time at the age of 84. She considers going over the Alaska Range to be the best feeling in the world, and this year she wanted to see what's beyond McGrath. She recently became a grandmother, is 63 years old, and raced with her brother Matt, who's also in his 60s. Janice and Matt have raced together before, and she found it a joy to share the experience with him. They had hoped to cross under the Burled Arch in Nome together at the finish line of the race, and were successful in doing just that. So welcome, Janice. Thank you for being here, and congratulations on your race. And I'm excited to talk with you and hear about how everything went.
Thanks, Leah. Really was a dream come true. And
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's never too late to try. It's
Mm-hmm.
my message. And don't ever let anybody tell you that you're too old to do things. So if you can dream it, it'll happen.
Yep. That's awesome. And I think it's important too to not give up on it and say, oh, that door is closed. Oh, there's no one else who's done it, who's my age or who's, whatever, who looks like me or, whatever. I think that's really an empowering thing to just, do it, decide to do it. So I'm curious to know, how long have you wanted to do the 1,000-mile race? What prevented you from doing it earlier, and what made this the right time to do it?
Well, I think it's always been one of those impossible things in my mind, that you could only be young and strong and um, have the fortitude to do that distance. Just in my head, it was too big of a dream.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started kind of thinking, I kind of have it down, going to McGrath, and I just want to see what's beyond McGrath. And
Mm-hmm.
I kept, thinking about Nome, but not really allowing myself to appreciate the enormity of the task. Otherwise, I get overwhelmed and discouraged. And
Mm-hmm.
so all the while I thought, well, you could try and, let's see what Ophir looks like, and God, well, if you get there, maybe you can get to Cripple, maybe you can get up to the Yukon. At least I could get to the Yukon. So I just sort of incrementally set myself these little goals, and didn't really allow myself to think so far in the distance,
Mm-hmm.
to actually making it to Nome.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of psychologically, that's how it worked out better for me. And I thought, well, I could always try and see how it goes, and if everything works out, great. You know, if if not, then at least I'll not go through life thinking, oh, I should have tried that.
Yeah.
So, but another thing that kept me from doing this for so many years is just orthopedic problems. I have arthritic knees, and from years of ski racing.
Mm.
So it just wouldn't have been a possibility for me. And then when I was in my mid 50s, I had my I had my first total knee replacement. And then a couple years after, had my second knee done, and I thought, wow, I don't have any more pain. This is really awesome. So then I could start to dream again about hiking and about backcountry skiing. I got back into that again, and well, gee, maybe I can get beyond McGrath.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like better living through medicine, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's really what allowed me to pursue this dream, was getting 2 knee replacements. So, and they did great. So I was really happy with
Yeah.
how it performed.
I didn't realize that you were doing this on with after 2 knee replacements. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
But that really is what kept me doing it all, from doing it all these years, was just
Yeah.
physically being able to do it. And the last time, well, one, I guess the second to the last time I tried going to McGrath was a really bad year, and I just knew I wouldn't be able to push through 3-foot drifts in a blizzard with arthritic knees. So
Mm-hmm.
that was years that I scratched in Squintina, and just determined, well, I can't do this until I get my knees done. So
Yeah.
that, and then try again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how have things changed over the years? Like since 2002, I've seen pictures of the bikes from that time and they're a lot different. So I'm wondering, what it was like doing the race in 2002 versus now. And also how the, kind of feeling of the race or the community has evolved.
Yeah. Well, definitely. It was back then in the early days. Of course, we didn't have fat tire bikes. We had rims which were essentially twice the width of a mountain bike rim, called snowcats, and we would find the widest tire that we could find that would fit on a 26-inch rim, and that was our fat tire bike.
Mm-hmm.
And we used old hardtail mountain bike frames that would have enough clearance for that with the rim and the tire. So sometimes it was just, you were just kind of hunting through junkyards and stuff for old mountain bike frames.
Hmm.
Uh, so definitely more of a challenge with a skinny wheel, not a whole lot of flotation. And so we ended up pushing a lot, as you can imagine, because the trail is still a snow machine trail, and you're kind of at the mercy of local village traffic or the Iditarod trail breakers going through.
Mm-hmm.
So my first race, I think it took me 7 days to get to McGrath. Um, then the next year, I had one of the first fat tire bicycles, and it wasn't such a great design. Definitely a little bit of an improvement, but it had its own challenges, being a kind of a new R&D type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but then after bikes started evolving and rims started getting wider and tires getting more specialized for travel on snow, then it's like, well, I think that's when the event really started booming in popularity, was that it was just more accessible,
Mm-hmm.
and there were a higher success rate of participants, actually being able to go the distance on better equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now equipment is just fantastic. There's really no reason to be handicapped these days by lack of technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
everything is so readily available too. Like I'm guessing in those early days, like unless you were in Alaska, you probably wouldn't really have access, I would think. Like
Huh?
you wouldn't really know people who had done this before or where to find this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, a lot of R&D goes on up here just because that's what we do in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And um, so there we get to design it and build it and test it, and we're just really fortunate to have a few individuals in our community who are very dedicated to improving technology in
Mm-hmm.
this. Yeah.
Cool. And has the like community or like kind of feel of the race evolved since then?
It's definitely it's definitely grown. just in terms of sheer numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it used to be you could go out on a training ride and you knew who had been there before you just by the the tread pattern of their
Yeah.
of fire. Oh, Ron's been through here. Oh, he's commuting this morning, and now there's so many more people fat biking, and again, it's just more accessible. And
Mm-hmm.
with the increase in the number of events going on all across the country, it's just so cool to see people from all over the country and all over the world convene in Alaska for the ITI, whether it's to McGrath or to Nome.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just definitely expanded the reach of where people are coming from. And there's probably not as many Alaskans doing this race as there are people from other areas, which I
Mm-hmm.
kind of interesting. But it's cool. It's definitely it draws a diverse um, array of people who are passionate about
Mm-hmm.
fat biking.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess like, the 1,000 miles, it's a long experience. It's a far thing, but like, like in a nutshell, like how would it go? Or, if you could summarize it.
Well, this year we got incredibly lucky. Um, just we lucked out with, you know, 3 weeks of stability in the weather system. So I never really felt like we had to like race the weather, to get through sections before the snow hit or get through sections before it got too windy. It's just been a really unusual year. All the horror stories I hear about the weather on the coast and um, how dangerous it is. It was just
Mm-hmm.
confirmed. And when we went through all the blowholes, it was just a breeze. It wasn't not an issue. Probably the windiest for us was leaving Shaktoolik, going toward Little Mountain Safety Cabin, and then across Norton Bay to Koyuk. That was definitely the windiest, and it took us a long time to get across and with the headwind. But had it been a normal year where the weather is more volatile, it's colder, etc. Honestly, I'm not really sure that I could have made it. I budgeted 30 days, which is the maximum number of days that you can be out there and be an official finisher.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that it took 9 fewer days than that. I'm really delighted by that. And again,
Mm-hmm.
doing to know preparation of my own, just getting lucky. So some years you're
Well,
just lucky, and other years you're just not very lucky. So you just go with what you're dealt,
yeah.
and leave it at that. Prepare for the worst, but hope for the best.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So, what would you say were the most challenging parts, and how did you get through them?
Well, for me, the hills are always the most challenging for me because you know and I'm pretty sure most women would attest to this. We're smaller. We don't have the muscle mass, and yet our bikes weigh as much as any man's.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm 120 pounds, and my bike, I think it weighed out when I started at 72 pounds, which is a lot heavier than I ever thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me, 72 pounds is too heavy, but I really wanted to make sure that I was prepared for 40 below first and 40 above.
Mm-hmm.
So so what are you going to do, right? You still have to pedal or push this thing. So the steeper hills were definitely hard for me, getting my bike up those really steep inclines where you're toe kicking. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to get your bike up and over these things, and they
Mm-hmm.
really take a toll on my leg muscles. So, and I have a weird physiology. I retain fluid like crazy. I have a lot of third spacing edema,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of it just has to do with exertion and, maybe not enough protein to maintain muscle or rebuild muscle,
Mm-hmm.
um, hydration issues, all that sort of stuff. But other people don't have that problem at all. So I'm really jealous of them. But, so I'm always out there trying to manage the effort. But if you have to get up those hills, you have no choice. You have to get up the hills.
Mm-hmm.
The stretches like through the Farewell Burn are real challenging for me. And then um, going from Ophir to Ruby is really hard. There's some
Mm-hmm.
climbing in there, sustained climbing. And then once I hit the flats and the rivers, I feel like I could go forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a pretty efficient pedaler, um, and I maintain one speed very well, and I can just go for
Mm-hmm.
a long time. So the flatter sections, whereas it tends to wear some individuals down, I find it more restful, more um,
Mm-hmm.
a chance to recover.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so I don't mind the Yukon. I don't mind riding across the ice. So
Yeah.
that's all. Hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk more? Sorry, my dog is barking in the background. I don't know if you can hear him. Um, can you talk more about the crossing of Norton Bay and how?
So we went from Shaktoolik to Little Mountain and decided to rest there because we wanted to be as strong as we could be to cross Norton Bay. And it was a ground blizzard. It was wind was right in your face as per usual. And it was just surreal. You once you start out from Little Mountain, you have to get to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no option to think about bivvying.
Right.
If you don't think you can get to the other side, then you shouldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
So, off we went. We waited for sunrise, um, mostly because it's just so beautiful. And headed out into the wind. And I can ride my granny pretty well. Um, and my brother was walking a lot of it, and he can walk fast, but I can ride a granny. So we were both about the same speed.
Mm-hmm.
Up until the closer we got to Koyak, the wind got stronger and stronger. And then it was even just hard to push your bike into the wind, just to go forward.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know what the wind speed was, but it was just really physically hard to make any forward effort. But so we ended up both pushing our bikes the closer and closer we got to Koyak.
Hmm.
Um, and that little light out on the hills of Koyak, you can see from 15, 20 miles away, which never seemed to get any closer.
Right.
So, but anyway, that was the scariest part of it, I think. It's just because it had that ooh factor, uh,
Mm-hmm.
notorious. Um, but again, we were really lucky that it wasn't colder than it was. We did have the winds, but we weren't as frightened about getting frostbite or
Mm-hmm.
um, this year. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the people on foot and skis in the last couple days they've had the winds haven't been as strong. They were like 10 to 15 miles an hour when they were crossing, but it was like 10 below zero.
Hmm.
So like, wind chills of like 30 below.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I'd rather have is like lighter winds and colder or really strong winds and a hair warmer.
Yeah. I think I go for lower wind. You can bundle up, but you can't do anything about the wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of bundling up, how did you protect your face or like, because I always struggle with, you know, like protect because in cases like that, you need to protect your skin
Uh-huh.
from frostbite. So like, with between goggles and something over your mouth, it's so hard to manage the moisture.
Yeah, yeah. I have this tried and true face mask. It fits, fixes with Velcro behind my head.
Hmm.
First I start with a musher's hat, and so the ear flaps come down and attach under my chin, and then this face mask goes on, and it's got these little holes in it where my mouth is, and a cone of kind of fleecy neoprene over the nose.
Hmm.
Uh, so I don't have any problems breathing through that, and because of the little holes, the the air is always warm. And then I've got a pair of goggles they're called Julbo, Julbo.
Hmm.
And the lenses kind of pop out a little bit if you want. It's articulated on each side. So you can pop the lenses out just ever so slightly and create a little bit of airflow. So if you have a problem with fogging,
Hmm.
uh, it's minimized because I've got a little bit of airflow going over that. And then I've got my soft shell jacket with the fur ruff. You put
Hmm.
that fur ruff around here, and as you know, it just silences the wind and creates this nice warm pocket of air around your face.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got your headlight here, and that creates some warmth too. So I don't really have issues with fogging. I know other people use um, like a respirator.
Hmm.
I've tried that. It's really uncomfortable for me. So I actually brought one and never touched it. There's another one that snow machiners use. It's kind of got this big schnoz of neoprene over over the nose to direct vapor out farther away from you so it doesn't fog up your goggles. Some people like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I've experimented with pretty much everything and have always gone back to my tried and true little fleecy
Yeah.
mask here. And, it's just, yeah, just go with something that you have experience with and you're
Hmm.
confident in, not constantly fiddling with it because, everything bothers you out there, right? So
Right.
if you're fiddling with it and it fits right, then you're comfortable and dialed in. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I tried even using that KT tape.
Yeah.
I see people using that, drove me nuts. I was like, I gotta get this on my face. I don't know if it even is very effective. And I don't have experience with it, so I didn't really appreciate it when I had it. So I just ended up going without it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
last year when I was up there for the first time, like when we were going over Rainy Pass, it was really cold and there was a really strong wind coming
Mhm.
down. And so I put some of that frost tape on my cheeks and my nose. And then, but what ended up happening is like on the edge of the tape, there got to be a little bit of ice. And I didn't
Mhm.
realize that there was ice forming there. And like it was a little bit crunchy, but I kind of thought it was just kind of part of the tape. And so I
Uh-huh.
ended up getting a little bit of frostbite,
Oh,
or frost nip on my
yeah.
cheek, just kind of right on the edge of
Uh-huh.
where the tape was. And I thought, like, that's kind of stupid. Like, I wore this tape so I wouldn't have frost nip on
Oh,
my face.
yeah. Well, when it's cold, it's really hard to tell, you know,
Yeah.
it's whether you have any exposed skin. And we never really checked each other. I think that's a good idea if you're riding with other people and there is a danger for getting frost nip, is to be sure to check each other's faces because you cannot feel it,
Hmm.
until it's too late. But if somebody
Hmm.
else see what's going on, it can prevent some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. Um, what kinds of foods did you find you liked eating? Like, what did you wish you had more of?
I had too much food. um, I ate predominantly I think it's called Peak Fuel, the brand. Have great recipes
Hmm.
and they're very tasty. I never got tired of that. And tons of protein and sodium in all of that. Um, I brought I brought a lot of things like um, dried steak strips, kind of jerky, but they're actual steak strips, or Korean pork barbecue jerky, lots
Mm-hmm.
of protein, but I just found I just didn't really want to eat it. Energy wise, it wasn't doing anything for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I pretty much lived constantly on carbohydrates, thick cookie bars, anything dense, anything
Mm-hmm.
that was sweet and dense, have a lot of sugar and fat in it. Um, Candy, pretty much just carbohydrates and sugar.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross. But yeah, for some reason I just was turned off of protein. I even had sausage
Mm-hmm.
links,
Mm-hmm.
shelf-stable sausages that I thought would be really good, just were not appetizing. So I ended up leaving a lot of that kind of stuff behind in my drops
Mm-hmm.
and just going for the stuff that I knew could get me from one checkpoint to the next. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I was at the checkpoints, that's when I, tried to load up on the freeze-dried meals that had more of a protein content to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you saw the Iditarod dog teams out there, and
Yeah. It was cool. It was like it almost felt like, okay, they were the race and we were just out there spectating. Yeah. Uh, they're pretty awesome just watching those dogs go by. I mean, the dogs are the athletes, and they're tremendous. And whenever the the dog teams would stop, those dogs would lay down and rest. They're pretty smart. These
mm-hmm.
dogs they need. And so we had an opportunity to be integrated with the Iditarod twice because they had a change in their course as well because of lack of snow through the Farewell Burn. Um, so it was pretty neat being out there with the dogs and cheering them on. And, sometimes the mushers would cheer us on and,
Mm-hmm.
you guys are doing great, so it was pretty cool
Yeah.
um, getting to know some of the mushers and talking to them at the finish. And when we got to know them, we crashed the Iditarod Mushers banquet,
Mm-hmm.
which was a blast. Yeah, they had prime rib. So, yeah, it was pretty
Yeah, the
fun.
buffet is awesome.
Yeah.
Especially when you finish the race. That when I did it in 2023, I finished same kind of time as you, or a couple hours later. So we finished the race and then went right over to the Mushers banquet, and like just that buffet of food is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Half my plate was salad. I just
Uh-huh.
craved something green, or fruit or anything. So it was just loaded up with salad and threw that prime rib on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Are there any like mushers who you were rooting for or who you talked to more than others?
Yeah. Well, Anna Barrington, she's local.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, we know her and her sister with Seeing Double Kennels.
Mm-hmm.
So we were around her at White Mountain and also Top Cop Cabin in
Oh,
Finland.
nice.
Yeah, and then a lot of, there's a lot of women doing the Iditarod. A gal named Millie, whose last name is escaping me now, but she stopped.
Porcelain.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and did some selfies with us and chatted, and another woman, Samantha, who won an award for, I think, most inspirational or something, and a lot of women out there. So it was very cool feeling that kind
Mm-hmm.
of with these bold and strong female athletes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and you know Sam, so she got Rookie of the Year. And her
Yeah.
her partner is Tucker,
Uh-huh.
who won the ITI 350 on ski.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was amazing. He
Yeah.
was, God, what a machine. This
Yeah.
guy. Several pairs of skis, running shoes. He came in with he said it was a stick, but it was really a log because he
Right.
brought a pole. And it was this,
Yes.
I swear it was like 2 inches in diameter. That's not a stick, that's a log that he was using as a ski pole.
Yeah.
So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't imagine how tired his triceps must have
I
been, or how
know.
strong he must be to not
Yeah.
have sore
Yeah.
triceps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was really neat to be around Iditarod.
Mm-hmm. So you work as a coach, and I'm curious to know what aspect of coaching brings you the most joy and what your favorite
Oh,
part of that is.
um, well, I guess developing an athlete from having the dream to actually being physically capable of fulfilling that dream.
Mm-hmm.
And some athletes come to me with different skill sets. Some are, pretty pretty much rookies at fat biking. Of course, you have to do some qualification events, to do it. But Susitna is a lot different from being out there on the ITI. So just developing these skills, and it's so three-dimensional, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in their physical capability, their mental capability, going through their gear list, what if scenarios, teaching them about the course, the whole nine yards.
Mm-hmm.
And then just giving them the confidence through the experience in their training that they're fit enough and they have the skills to actually do it.
Yeah.
And then they get to McGrath, and it's like, as you know, it's life changing.
Yeah.
It changes your life completely. um, so yeah, that's what I enjoy most about the coaching, is just not getting people in shape, but being a part of that journey of something so momentous that it totally changes their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. And smart that you bring in those other aspects, those other skill sets that are so critical. More like equally as important as like as a high FTP, like
Hmm.
is having the coping and the skills to do something like this. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I've been through every scenario out there. What ifs? So, um, tricks up my sleeve, and I figure that I'm also there to make the learning curve less steep,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of shortcut a lot of their trial and error. It's like, well, okay, I've tried that. I can tell you it doesn't work. I've tried
Mm-hmm.
that. This does work. Or
Yeah.
that's a really good idea. I haven't actually tried that. Let's try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
great.
I'm constantly learning too from my athletes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say drives you to events like the ITI?
What drives me to do them?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to to explore the realm of what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I think, oh, I wonder if I can do that, and if I put my mind to it and prepare for it, I think I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's, if I can visualize it, if I can actually see a path through it into the end, then I know I can do it. If
Mm-hmm.
I can see myself doing it in my own head, I know it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the right amount of preparation and with the right amount of luck.
Mm-hmm.
I won't I won't lie. There's a lot of situations where I wouldn't be able to make it. So I have to be really lucky. So yeah.
Yeah. That factors into it, but it's pretty amazing when you realize like, wow, if I set my mind to this and do the preparation and take the steps and, try to be as smart about this as possible, like, you know, I can maybe do this and like what else could I do, next?
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yep.
Really empowering.
It is very empowering.
Hmm.
So
So if someone were interested in doing an event like this for the first time, I guess what advice? I guess, through your coaching, you must have a lot of people who come to you, but like what advice do you have for kind of people who are new to the sport?
um well, getting through the qualifiers is really
Mm-hmm.
important, of course. And if you haven't grown up doing, being in the wilderness, it's very intimidating, and there's this huge skill set that you need to develop. I grew up in Alaska, lived in the cold all my life. So there's stuff that I take for granted that I just know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for people, I think just getting into it, I think attending one of the camps is a really great idea. ITI has a camp. I think J. Peterbury has a camp. Learning from experienced people, putting you into all kinds of scenarios of what ifs. What if this? What if that? What do you do in these
Mm-hmm.
situations? How do you do this? And then, being comfortable with bivvying out and being comfortable in the cold and wind and being able to manage yourself. And then you take those skills and then you go practice them. And just look for as many opportunities as you can to put yourself in extreme situations where you can practice those.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell a lot of my athletes, okay, look at the temperatures, find the coldest place within driving distance, and you go there and that's where you train.
Uh-huh.
You know, 20 below, okay, what about over there? Is it 30 below? Okay, no, you go over there where it's 30 below. They look at me like I'm crazy. But yeah, you really have to practice what you learn in the camps. But I think definitely the camps is a
Mm-hmm.
great start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then hone your skills from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great advice. Good. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Um, I am so encouraged by how many women are out there trying this. And you don't have to be fast to do an ITI.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, some of the slower people do better just because they're methodical. They don't act irrationally. They're out there just plugging away, taking the time to rest, making the meals, just keeping at it. And eventually they catch up to the people who are faster and have already burned themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to be persistent and believe in yourself that you've done the preparation and you can get there. It doesn't matter how long it takes you.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to keep going, and you'll get it done. So, I mean, that's the one of the biggest takeaways this year is you don't have to be fast to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great. Good. Well, that's great advice. Appreciate that. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and for being such an inspiration by showing us, what's possible. So for those of you watching, to hear more about Janice, you can check out a documentary that she was in called The Engine Inside, and I'll put a link to that in the description. Currently in the race, there are 4 athletes still on the trail on the coast within less than 500 miles from Nome. John and Eric, on foot and ski respectively, are in the town of Golovin at mile 864, hopefully getting a good meal right now. Kari and Peter both are on foot and are between Quake and Elam, around mile 815. So for those of you watching, thank you. And in the next few days, watch because I'll be interviewing other women who have been in the 1,000 mile race, Julie Perla Garcia on Friday and Kari Gibbons next week, as well as Lyle Wilcox, who won the women's race in the 350-mile race to McGrath. So that's all I got for tonight. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks for having me.